Hello, everybody, and welcome to the B78 Endurance Hub weekly webinar. We've got a great series going here. I think this is number 13, and every week we're going to release a new one. Hopefully, you can tune in live, but if not, these will be available at a later date. So, again, our goal here is really to share with you a whole bunch of different things about endurance sports. So mostly focusing on triathlon, but we do get into biking, running, and swimming on their own as well. And mostly focused on beginners slash intermediates. Certainly, if you've been doing this for a while and you're more advanced, there may be information here that you're very familiar with, but still maybe some stuff that you can pick up on. So we hope you join us. Today's topic, following on from last week. Last week we did 5 tips to help you be a better swimmer. So this week we're going to do 5 tips to help you be a better cyclist. And you can guess what's coming next week: 5 tips to help you be a better runner. Of course, if you're brand new and you don't know, that's the order in which the 3 sports unfold in a triathlon event: swim, bike, and run. So let's jump in here and talk about 5 things that you can do to be a better cyclist. Now, obviously, there's 1,000 things that you can do to be a better cyclist, but I thought I'd focus on a few really simple ones here and just to get you started. So, number one, have your bike properly fitted. So, if you're new to triathlon or cycling, maybe you're just doing cycling, probably one of the best places that you can spend a little bit of money. And by a little bit, I mean it's not a little bit. It's usually a couple $100, probably anywhere from about 150 to $300 for a good bike fit. But is to have your bike properly fitted. I mean, this is it's one of the most important things that people can do. And, generally speaking, if you're going to a bike shop, hopefully they're going to set you up, to purchase a bike. Hopefully they're going to set you up um, with a bike that is suitable in the first place. If you're in the secondhand market and, you're shopping around trying to get a used bike, which a lot of people do, maybe check in with a bike shop first or check in with an expert first just to see what size of bike you should be looking for, because nothing's worse than ending up on a bike that's far too small for you or far too big for you. You definitely want to be on the right size bike. Again, if you go to a bike shop, hopefully they're competent enough to get you on the right size bike. But you got to be careful in the secondhand market. You got to make sure you really know what the right size is for you. Once you have a bike, getting a bike fit is just like essential. A lot of good bike shops, if you purchase the bike from them, likely will include a bike fit with that. At the very least, a very basic bike fit. Now, bike fitting really has evolved in the last 10, 15 years. We kind of used to just go from, eyeballing it. That was generally how people worked, or how does it feel? A good coach or somebody could look at you and have a fairly good idea of what it should look like. But also, how does it feel? Is it comfortable? Can I produce power? Like, do I feel like I'm strong in this position? And then that kind of, at a slightly higher level, 10, 20 years ago, they might use some things that measure the angles of your knees and ankles to make sure that's okay. But now, really, we have some very advanced bike fitting. And if you get a really high end bike fit, often they'll use lasers to see if your knees are tracking properly. They may use some computer imagery. So they'll put little dots at various joints, and they'll get a little readout of what the angles are actually doing in your knees and ankles and hips and low back and neck, and they can adjust from there. Now, one of the neat things about bikes is that they're highly adjustable for the most part. If you're on a high-end time trial bike, sometimes those are a little more finicky. But if you're on a road bike, they're highly adjustable. You can change the seat height, the angle of the seat. You can change the fore aft position of the seat, so how far forward the seat is and how far back the seat is. You can change the stem, so the part that the handlebar is attached to. You can change, the height of that, the angle of that, the length of that. There's lots of things that you can change on a bike to have it fit properly for you. So when you book a bike fit, again, if you're at a good bike shop, often they'll have a mechanic or maybe the owner will be competent in the area of bike fitting because they've been around bikes forever. And at the very least, you can get one where even they just look at you and make sure it looks like it's set up properly. Um, but a good bike fit should accomplish a few things. First and foremost, it should be comfortable, especially if you're just starting out in this sport. If you're a real beginner, you want to be comfortable on that bike. You want the seat to feel comfortable. Granted, I'll asterisk that by saying a lot of higher end bike seats don't feel comfortable initially, but usually you get used to them. Um, so you want the bike to be comfortable first and foremost. If you're uncomfortable, you're not going to enjoy yourself, and nothing else really matters if you're just in a world of hurt every time you go riding. So comfort's a huge factor, and often bike positions as we get more comfortable on the bike, as we become better cyclists, maybe we're getting a little more into racing, or our goals sort of increase. We can put ourselves in what we call more aggressive positions. So maybe our front end, like our shoulders, get a little bit lower in the front end, so it makes it a little more aerodynamic. Lots of changes you can make along the way to adjust your fit based on your level. But again, comfort first and foremost. The other thing you want to be able to do on a bike is actually generate power. So you want the bottom half of your body, so legs and low back even, to be in a position on the bike that allows you to generate a good amount of power. And again, a good bike fitter will look at the angles, will look at how you're set up, and hopefully put you in a favorable position. The other huge factor, especially when we're considering triathlon or even road bike racing, is aerodynamics, and that's another component that comes into play. And if you're new to the sport and you're seeing all these fancy triathlon bikes that have weird handlebars up front, the primary reason for that is to help athletes get into a favorable aerodynamic position. And there's lots to say in the bike fitting area about what can be done, at the back of the bike. So seat angles and stuff change in order to get you in that favorable position. And favorable means aerodynamically means usually that we have a low front end, we have small surface area at the front, so not a lot of wind is hitting us. Uh, Always good to think in extremes. So if you think of a rocket, for example, that we might send into outer space, very aerodynamic. It's got a pointy tip at the front and it's cylindrical. It needs to be very aerodynamic so it can move quickly and efficiently. And if you think at the other end of the extreme, something that's not very aerodynamic would be like a tractor. So, tractors don't need to be that aerodynamic. They need to just be strong and be able to tow things. So they're not necessarily as concerned with aerodynamics. And then you've got everything in between. Like a Ferrari is very aerodynamic because they want it to move quickly. Uh, and a semi truck actually, reasonably aerodynamic. That's sometimes you'll see the semi trucks that are hauling things with that weird kind of shape up top. Usually that's for aerodynamics and to make it a little more efficient, probably on fuel. Um, so aerodynamics on the bike, very, very important. So again, uh, get a proper bike fit. Spend the money to get a proper bike fit, and ideally, the three things that they're going to look at are you comfortable? Can you produce power? Do you feel strong? And are you as aerodynamic as we can make you without taking away the comfort factor? As you kind of progress in your triathlon journey, and if you look all the way up at the pros, I would say they're still in a comfortable position, but also they're trying to be as powerful and as aerodynamic as they can be. Um, and sometimes maybe at the expense of a little bit of comfort, but they get used to it and they spend, hundreds and hundreds of hours in that position. So their body kind of adapts. Anyway, get a bike fit. It's super important. Learn proper pedaling mechanics. So, this is something, if you are a true beginner and you're coming at this and the only bike you have now has what we call flat pedals. So something where you may be wearing a running shoe. And, just like when you're a kid, you jump on your bike and you start pedaling. Very difficult to have proper pedaling mechanics when you're with that setup. Now, If you're getting into this and you get some clip-in pedals, so these are ones that are the shoe has a cleat or something that actually attaches to the pedal. Much easier to learn proper pedaling mechanics when you have that set up. And the reason is that the foot is now attached to the pedal, and so we can generate power and we can, basically create pressure around the entire pedal stroke. If you're in running shoes, there's really only one direction in which you can produce power or apply pressure to the pedals, and that's in the push phase. So when we're actually pushing on the pedals. But proper pedaling mechanics, there'll be a little bit of pressure all the way around. Now, in the old days, we used to talk about making a perfect circle. So you'd want to have like even pressure around the circle. Well, that's not the way it should be done. And if you think about it, the reason for that is the muscles that are involved in the back part of the pedal stroke. So when the pedal comes up and across the top, are not nearly as strong as the muscles involved in the push phase of that. So we don't necessarily want to have a perfect circle, but what we want to have is like a really smooth circle. So if we have a smooth pedaling technique, which requires that you kind of engage all the way around the pedal stroke, that's what we're after. But certainly when you get into power or like where am I producing the most, it's still going to be in that push phase because the musculature that's involved in that is a bit stronger. So, you know, proper pedaling mechanics is something you can really tap into. One little drill that's kind of fun to do if you have clip-in pedals, is single leg pedaling. So where we actually take one foot completely off the pedal and we just pedal with one leg. Now, this is a bit of an exaggerated version. Again, like it requires that you engage musculature all the way around, maybe a little more aggressively than you would otherwise. But what it's going to do is give you a little bit of a feeling of what it's like to actually engage the musculature that will pull the pedal up the backside of the pedal stroke and across the top and across the bottom, not just the push phase. So single leg pedaling is a nice way to feel that. Uh, Another great way to dial in some good pedaling mechanics is actually to do uh, what we call lower cadence or higher torque pedaling. So maybe you're going to go climb some hills, for example, and so your cadence or how fast you're spinning the pedals around will decrease a bit just because you're going uphill. And in a way, that kind of emphasizes the push phase, but you can still generate a little bit of power up the back, and you can kind of dial in a little bit on good pedaling mechanics when you slow the pedal rotation around a little bit. Uh, lots of videos on YouTube that can walk you through this. But definitely get a set of clip-in shoes if you're not at that stage yet, because it's going to help you really ingrain better pedaling mechanics. So, kind of along with that is learning to spin at a higher RPM. So again, RPM stands for revolutions per minute, and it's synonymous with the word cadence, which is another word that you might hear. And it's basically how fast are you spinning the pedals around. And we're often measuring this in how many revolutions are happening per minute. So if you see RPM, that's what it means. Generally, when people are new to the sport, the default will be that their RPM is actually quite low. And part of that, the reason for that is just a coordination thing. Like if you haven't ridden a bike much, spinning your legs quickly around is a coordination thing if you haven't done it. Um, and so your nervous system kind of has to learn like how to spin the pedals a little bit faster. Now, don't take that to mean that you need to be like a track cyclist and be up at 150 RPM. That's not what I'm saying. Uh, but what I'm saying is if you do have a cadence sensor or something that's measuring RPM and you're constantly down in the 50 or 60 range, that's a little bit too low. Uh, when we generate power on a bike, RPM is one part of that equation, as well as torque, how hard you push on the pedals. And so if you can kind of encourage your body to learn how to spin a little bit quicker, it's going to help you ultimately generate a little bit more power. Uh, the other thing that's favorable about having a higher RPM is it's not going to smash your legs as much as like a low RPM or what we call a high torque type of pedaling. So think of it this way: if you're going to climb a hill and it's very steep, you're pedaling, the RPM is going to really slow down, and that really beats up your legs. It's like doing a strength workout. But if you can learn to spin the legs a little bit faster and put it in a little bit of a lighter gear, that's really going to help save your legs. It's just another way to get to, a higher power output without so much pressure on the muscles. So doing little RPM sets is a great way to do this. So like RPM pyramids, for example. So maybe you're going to spend 1 minute at 80 RPM, and then a minute at 85, and then 90, and then 95. And then maybe at 100, you're just sort of right at your limit and you're bouncing up and down in the saddle. So that's kind of right up in your limit. So then we need to kind of back off a little bit at that and maybe get good around 95. And then as the body gets more comfortable there, and you get more coordinated, now you can kind of inch it up again. One thing that's really neat to do is go look at the best track cyclists in the world, because they can spin at incredibly high RPMs. And again, when we're talking about power output, that's part of the reason. So they have very high torque and they have very high RPM, and they can produce very high wattage because of it. And they're so coordinated, they can do it, and it looks quite smooth. It's quite remarkable to watch. I'd encourage you to go look on YouTube for some, maybe Olympic track cyclists or something, and see how fast they spin their legs. It's pretty cool. Okay, so along the same lines, work on your ability to generate torque. So torque is basically how hard are you pushing on the pedals. So a great way to get a workout is to go to a hill, if you have a hill by your place, and just climb up and down the hill. And what you'll notice is generally, unless you have tons of really, really, really easy gears, like maybe on a mountain bike, generally speaking, the RPM or the cadence is going to drop a little bit because you're going uphill. And eventually you may run out of gears, which means, okay, now I'm in my easiest gear and I don't have another easier gear. And so, the hill's steep enough that my RPM has dropped a little bit, and my pedaling sort of revolutions are slowing down. And that's not a bad thing, because what that's going to help you do is work on your ability to generate torque, which again is part of the power equation. It's just going to make you stronger, basically. So maybe each week you're including some hill repetitions on your bike. If you're indoors riding on a smart trainer or any kind of trainer, you can put it in a slightly harder gear, slow the RPM down, and really get good at pushing a little bit harder. And that'll help your ability to generate torque. Okay. And last one. One of the greatest things about cycling is that volume, so the amount that you ride, is really going to help your fitness. The beautiful thing about cycling is it's non-impact. Unlike running, you have to be very careful with. You have to manage your impact load, or you can run into injury problems. Lots of people get injured running because they do too much volume and the body just can't handle it. But in cycling, it's very gentle on the body. And, I'm not saying go out, if you're a total beginner, go out and ride 8 hours. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that you can gradually increase volume and, get your long rides up to, 1.5, 2.5, 3, even 4 hours. And there's very little risk to that, especially if you're set up properly on the bike and your bike shoes fit properly and the cleats are, have a good bike fit, item number one. If that's all good, you can gradually increase volume and get very, very, very fit without too much risk. That's one of the beautiful things about biking. It's a great way to build aerobic fitness without the same kind of impact that we have from running. So increasing your volume, great way to help your cycling. That's it for today. So 5 really easy tips. Let's run through them again. Have your bike have your bike properly fitted. Really, really important. Learn proper pedaling mechanics. Learn how to spin at higher RPM, and work on your ability to generate torque, and try and incorporate some volume as you go. So, but make it progressive, make it gradual. That's it for today. Next week, we're going to do the same thing, but with running. 5 tips to help you become a better runner. Hope everybody has a great week, and we'll talk to you then.